Welcome, everyone, to today's FinTech Hot Seat Head-to-Head. My name is Craig Jeffrey. I'm the founder and managing partner of Strategic Treasure. Our topic for today is data management, and we're very pleased that you could join us as we consider the challenges and relevant solutions in this space. First, our format. Each company has 15 minutes to present, followed by 7 minutes of Q&A. And for those who are first-time attendees of our FinTech Hot Seat Head-to-Head sessions, please note that we use an active timer to provide clear visibility of where we stand throughout each presentation. The color of the timer bar shifts a bit ahead of time to transition to the Q&A section, so the presenter has a visual clue to gracefully close out that section. Next, audience questions. If you'd like to ask a question to a particular presenter or about the topic in general, please put your questions in the chat box and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Time moves quickly in these presentations, so type in your questions as soon as you can. Our participants today are from Kyriba and TIS. From Kyriba, it's Andrew Blair, and from TIS, it's Jolene Grimont-Prey. And welcome, Andrew and Jolene. And
Thanks, Craig.
If I have mispronounced anybody's name, please correct it. That would be great. Awesome. All right, let's begin. We'll begin with some of the challenges that we see with data management in finance and treasury. So on the screen, you can see a number of different icons showing some of the challenges with data management. Most of you are familiar with those, but this is a good setup for the discussion. So we present the challenges, and the different vendors and presenters, the hot seat, those sitting in the hot seat, can address select ones that they choose to and explain how they address these. First, one of the challenges is ensuring clean, accurate, and consistent data. We've heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out. So eliminating duplicates, fixing formatting errors or differences from one system to another is important to get that data clean. Maintaining integrity across multiple sources in a timely manner is another challenge for all organizations. Next, we'll look at normalizing and integrating data from diverse systems. If you're connecting ERPs, TMS, different risk platforms, admin systems, and bank platforms, normalizing that, integrating those in a timely manner matters. And so standardizing inputs for consistent analysis usually flows into those challenges. How do we standardize those? Timing is everything, and managing data volume and speed also is crucial. More data is usually helpful, but handling a large amount of data inflows efficiently can be a challenge. It's one thing to draw it on a piece of paper. It's another thing to get that data into a system or have the system access it so that it can be used well to analyze or to transact. And scaling systems from a batch cycle or a daily cycle to real-time processing or streaming is the direction where everything's moving. It's getting faster, nothing's moving slower. Not everything needs to be instant, but things are moving towards real-time processing or streaming. Then another challenge is enabling advanced analytics and AI readiness. We want to be efficient. We want to be able to do good analysis. And so enabling that matters. And so one component of that is how do we prepare data for predictive insights so that we can use the machines and our own analytic abilities to do that. How do we support automation and machine learning within our overall infrastructure or within the particular tool? That's just another challenge. The penultimate challenge is strengthening data governance and security. Access to data is awesome and excellent, but we have to have the principle of isolating data and support the principle of least privilege so that data doesn't escape the system and proprietary information, confidential information doesn't get out there. So controlling access and permissions matters greatly. We want to protect and not have data loss occur, so data loss protection, and ensuring compliance with different regulations around that. Those matter greatly. Then we'll look at supporting legacy, current, and emerging formats. We live in a world of transition. We're looking back, we're looking current, and we're looking towards the future. So how do we manage transformation requirements as a shift occurs? And then backwards compatibility and future capable is an outflow of that. Those are 6 of the data challenges. You probably have more challenges than that. We listed a few of them for us to think about and consider. So I'm going to pull that off the screen now, and we'll turn it over to Andrew. Andrew, if you want to bring up your presentation deck on the screen, and I'll just tell you when it's available, and I'll tell you when to begin. So it looks good from this end. I see the head-to-head data management. It looks good. And are you all set?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. It's coming across great. I'll stay on the screen for a bit. I'll pop back on if needed, but you may begin. Go ahead, Andrew.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Craig, and thanks, Strategic Treasurer, for having us for the data management session today. I think it's good that we have a few more minutes than normal. I'm going to get right into the slides here. There are, as Craig kind of pointed out, there are many things that we can cover in this session, as everything that you do and everything that you're trying to accomplish, automate, streamline, it all relies on the data. I'm going to focus on 3 points really today, and the first one is around the extensibility that I believe, or that we believe, you will need going into kind of the next wave of technology advancement. Obviously, things like machine learning, artificial intelligence rely very much on the data, the quality of data. So we'll spend some time on that. And then the other components will be around APIs. So Craig mentioned APIs, and I want to spend just a few minutes talking about the importance of APIs. And then finally will be a self-service aspect of this. So when you look at a slide like I have up on the screen here, I think this will probably resonate with a lot of the kind of treasury tech stacks or data flows or integrations that you potentially may have. I think historically, when you think about treasury management systems and integrating data, it's always been kind of table stakes that you're able to rely on a vendor to kind of manage a lot of that for you. Manage the translation between system to system, manage the connectivity protocols that are set up within the framework of what you're ultimately trying to accomplish. That all still resides. So even though I won't cover so much in kind of the historic framework of how the systems communicate with one another, there's assumptions kind of behind the scenes as I go through some of these slides that all is still in place today. So again, you see examples of payments coming in, journal entries going out, bank statements coming in from the bank, then going back to the ERP system. All of those things need to be in place. The mechanics need to be there. And although the majority of my speaking today will be around APIs, that doesn't mean that there's not a good use case still for the traditional host-to-host or SFTP connectivity methods. Again, those are tried and true. I don't necessarily see those going away in the future. However, if you want your corporate treasury function, your finance functions to be nimble and able to kind of accept this new wave of technology, particularly around AI, you need to be aware of the benefits and what the API framework brings to the table in that conversation. So just kind of this sets the stage of the overarching wave of how data can get passed to and from. All of the data that you saw on that first slide, again, it needs to be managed in some type of way, right? So there's different systems that are within that technology framework, whether it's the ERP system, very prevalent, very straightforward. Obviously, the banks play a critical part within this dynamic. Trading solutions, whether you're executing in like on an investment portal, whether you're trading FX. And then there is what we call some of the other maybe more obscure solutions that have a tendency to maybe just have cash flows. Maybe they're payment origination systems, P2P solutions that aren't necessarily in the traditional framework of where treasury resides. But those need to be connected as well to give you a full depiction. So where I'm going to go in just a few minutes is actually taking you through the developer portal that we have that's enabled some of these automated connectivity streams. The other element that I mentioned around the self-servicing aspect of the discussions we have with APIs, because many companies say, yeah, we want to use APIs, but we don't necessarily have the expertise. How can you help us get there? So one of the things that we've embarked on is this tool called App Studio. So again, this isn't meant to be overly technical. The idea behind App Studio was it is a self-service kind of plug and play, no code solution that allows you within the framework of Kariba to actually create your own APIs, right? So even though we're, not necessarily, providing the technical expertise, we're giving you that infrastructure to say, this is the data that I want to move to and from the point solutions, as long as, of course, they support, the ability to connect via API, which most reasonable technology firms do today. We'll give you the infrastructure that you're just inputting that within the App Studio to be able to actually enable the APIs. Okay, so that's another important part of the overarching framework, which ultimately comes into the discussion around artificial intelligence. So the reason that AI is brought up, I think, in the context of data, is every conversation that we're having, at this point in an organization's life cycle is how can we leverage the data that we already have, the great data that we already have in the system, to become more efficient, to be, better informed, right? And so there are different waves of AI, and I'm not going to get into a 101 on AI, but it's important to understand where the data and the way in which we normalize the data, streamline the data, and make the data efficient plays into artificial intelligence and the benefit that you ultimately receive from that. So just a couple more slides here before I actually jump in to show you some screens within some different tools that we have. Again, one very, very important piece of the equation from the way that we see it is what was developed by Anthropic called MCP. What MCP essentially allows agents to do is get data via APIs. Okay, so nothing more necessarily that you need to know other than MCP is the framework, the genesis of what will ultimately allow your treasury data to get, all the information that it needs across the business. Okay, agent to agent communication that will give you that holistic point of view when you're trying to really leverage what the benefits and the framework of AI are going to bring. So this is kind of the last slide of ultimately conversing on the on the AI infrastructure. Whereas you'll see the MCP server sitting here. That's obviously very important. One of the things that you'll ultimately want to, ensure is that all of the data is secure, right? That it's not going out to open source. Everything is embedded, internally within your, secure ISO certifications. So again, kind of playing within the framework from that structure. So this is, again, just kind of a good overview of the way that we see APIs and the data that you have within your treasury management workstation, ultimately helping out with, the evolution of the API framework. Okay. And then the very last is, again, is I think an important one that kind of sits alongside of AI, is every company has their own artificial intelligence or data strategy, maybe said a better way. So what you'll ultimately want to do when you're looking at different vendors is see how do you plug into our data warehouse? What kind of streaming services do you have? Do you have the ability to leverage a solution like a Databricks or more, kind of relevant, maybe like the Power BI, Clip, Tableau in terms of the reporting studios? Okay, so just a couple things. I'm checking on time here that I wanted to highlight as we talked about APIs are the infrastructure that allows you to be successful to kind of create that connectivity dynamic. So as you can kind of see here, we have a developer portal that essentially publishes all of our API documentation. So there's different types of documentation that we have. We obviously have our own APIs that you can leverage for different purposes. So these are some of the categorizations that we would consider. Underneath each of the categorizations, you have different components within them. So what I'm showing you here, again, is the documentation. It's the actual Swagger specifications that you can actually leverage to see how do I, connect with this system to get the information ultimately that I want to, enable in my use cases. So a very, very good example of this is we have some customers that they leverage Microsoft Teams, for example. Instead of having users log into Microsoft Teams, they don't want them to go into the application. They just actually want to request a payment directly within Teams. What that does is that sends an API into the platform. The platform then can respond back to Teams. All good examples of those low to no code use cases that allow you to streamline data very, very simply. You'll also see in the marketplace here the different APIs that we have that we call kind of like standardized connectors, if you will. So the different banks that are enabled via API and what the functionality is associated to those, as well as the different ERPs. Okay, so again, you can just kind of select these. This is a public-facing site, obviously, that you can come into and just see all the documentation that we have around giving our customers the ability to integrate that data. Okay, so again, if we kind of come back to the summary of why these things are important, well, they're important because one, it's the new wave of kind of connecting in that API framework, but also it's giving you extensibility into the new wave technologies that you'll ultimately want to take advantage of. Okay. One of the other things, again, that I wanted to call out here is there's a tool that we leverage simply called Open Format Studio. And again, I mentioned previously that it's really table stakes to be able to kind of, have the vendor create the formats for you, do all of that on your behalf. But what a lot of our customers are asking for us to do now, and let me just reset this for a second, is to say, okay, well, we know that you have the formats, but we don't want to wait for you. We want to be able to do our own kind of interpretations on the fly. So again, there are different tools that you can take a standard, ISO 20022 file, for example, and maybe there's a specific change or a framework that you actually want to update. Directly within the tool, you can actually go and you can see this isn't coding necessarily. You're adding tags, removing tags, etc. There's even some sample tags that we have here. Once I process that, that's going to say what is the ultimate outcome after you've ran that particular rule set. And at the very bottom here, it's going to give you a before and after. So this is just a very simple example of taking like an unstructured address set within the XML file and making that a more structured basis. Okay. So again, really, really simple tools. You have the ability to take that not just on payment files. There's also other customizable scripts. You can leverage things like, again, ChatGPT, if you want to just ask a specific question. Obviously, again, there's no context or framework that you need to be expert in order to, create that code or that Python scripting. The tools can do that for you at this point. So again, an example of extensibility now into the framework of the technology that you'll have at your advantage, but also then you can, start to leverage some of that within the infrastructure as well. To close it out here again, this isn't meant to be again a demo of the solution necessarily. However, we started off that very first slide that kind of has an overview of all of the different data sets, right, that come into the equation. So again, this is a sample dashboard. This is not going to look, earth-shattering probably to anybody on the call. But as a treasury system, we have a lot of important information that our customers want to take advantage of. With the API connectivity framework and that MCP infrastructure, what that enables us to do now is to leverage some of that agentic technology. So you can kind of see here within the tool, you have some sample questions that just kind of give me the ability to say, hey, show me my current cash, for example, in Europe. And what this is doing is it's actually using those APIs. So with that MCP framework, and you can see it thinking, it'll give you the audit trail. It's going within the solution to look for all of that information that may be important to you, to ultimately pull that back out. So again, you can kind of see in the thinking steps here where it called. So this is the audit trail of the API information coming into it to give you back that information. Again, very, very simple. You can come back in here. You can chart this information out. It's going to give you obviously just the stats of what we were asking for. So here's just my breakdown of cash in Europe. but you also have the ability to ask it even some more, complex questions. So if I go into to the history here, a very common one that our customers will like to ask is like, help me start my day. So instead of, logging into the system, kind of having to navigate, what are the things that I need to be aware of? So it's going to give me what's my total cash, what are the bank connection statuses on a given day? Are there any issues that I need to resolve? How about payments? Maybe that are upcoming from a pending approval status, and then ultimately, giving me the highlights of how I would need to kind of walk through my day, for example. There are many, many other use cases for this. Obviously, you can track specific things like what are my variances on a forecast. I have a meeting, with a big bank upcoming, give me an executive summary associated to that. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do with that data is make it extensible and modernize it so that you can really take advantage of some of these new technologies and change the way that you're going through your day-to-day as a treasury practitioner.
Right. Thanks, Andrew. We're going to shift to the Q&A section. Thanks for the presentation and the discussion. I'm trying to see if I see any Q&A items. I'm not seeing the Q&A screen. It's somewhere around. So let me start with the first question.
Yep.
For accessing data, your system looked like it supports SFTP, API. Any other methods of connecting to other API gateways, other data sources?
Yeah, so I mean, a big one obviously is also connecting to like the Swift network, EBIX, networks, different banking protocols. I think the two most predominant methods are still going to be the host to host or or an API vehicle.
Okay, great. If anybody has questions, put them in the chat box. That's why I can't see them in the Q&A slot. For data security and data loss prevention, you shared some information on that. What levels exist for isolating data if we have the principle of least privilege? You showed the not sharing it outside the company, so you showed that wall in the picture. What about limiting access within the company if they're within your tool?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, so there's two different ways in which we look at like the data permission. So one is like literally the functionality that you want the users to have. So they, just do payments or they just do accounting or maybe they do everything. That's one layer of access. And then underneath of that, we call it data permission essentially. So you and I, Craig, can have the same access essentially, but we're supporting two different data sets. So I'm in Europe and you're in North America. So even though we're accountants or we're running the payment processes, I'm only seeing the data associated to EMEA where you're in NORM, and that's how we delineate the access profile versus what we call the data permission profile.
Okay. So on the completeness of data, so you showed a screen where it was not all the bank files have been reported. What methods do you have of showing completeness and accuracy of data? So I'll list a few things. So file controls, is the file complete? Is it the next one in sequence? Are all the banks reported? Are the data sets there? How do you make sure it's current and isn't duplicated, as well as alerts if the data is missing, if there's anything beyond what you showed on the screen?
Yeah, it's a good point. I saw that in the document as well. I think in the technology, some of those things are simply inherent, like the control totals, the integrity of the file. Like if we try to import a bank file that doesn't match the control totals, or there's something structurally incorrect with the file, it's just going to fail. There will be nothing that gets imported into the application. There will be notifications that are launched to that. There are also then the duplication notifications. And so one of the elements that you want to look at is like, did we actually, load this into the system already? There are components that are configurable actually that allow you to define what is a duplicate, right? So the simple one is they just sent the same bank statement twice. Obviously, that's a duplicate. There are other ones where, we got a payment from the ERP. We got another payment from the ERP later that has a lot of the same characteristics. How do we want to, look at that essentially? There's different ways of doing that. At the end of the day, what the system will allow you to do is basically side by side say, this is what we've received from either the bank or the ERP versus what we expected to receive. And so that gives, the end user that confidence, I guess, to say, this is, a completeness of our treasury cycle, which is kind of why I asked that question of starting the day, because I think that's one of the things that most people want to see as soon as they log in.
Is there a way of comparing, let's say, the original file with, let's say, a copy of the file that comes back from the bank, let's say for a payment file, to compare those so you can see if anything's been altered?
So just want to make sure I understand. So we send the payment file out, or are we receiving the file in and then we're sending it out in the same format? Is that the question that you were?
Well, the question is, let's say the ERP creates a file, it's ingested into your
Yep.
system, you
Yep.
send it on,
Yep.
and you want to do a comparison, not of what you sent to the bank, but what was generated by, let's say, SAP, the native, and
Yep.
compare something that came back from the bank, or that you
Yes.
sent back to an original system to ensure nothing was altered.
Yeah, so I think there are some security frameworks within that conversation to say, well, when we get the file from, let's say, SAP, whether it's API or over SFTP, likely that's going to be in a file format that's different than what Kariba or what we'll send to the bank to execute. So we'll get an IDOC and then we'll send an ISO 20022. Ultimately, what we do need to do in order for us to complete that full circle is when we get the acknowledgement data back from the bank, we need to, we need to swoop that back into the ERP, for example, to make sure that there's no differences in reconciliation. What we'll always do at the end of the day is we'll provide a control total to say, hey, you sent us a file with 100 payments in it for $1 million. This is what we sent out to the bank. That needs to match. And then we do have the raw files, of course, on both ends of the spectrum.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So on the self-service aspect and the different, let's just say, technology stacks that people use, what do you see as the predominant use within an application versus within a company? Using your BI tools or your visualization tools versus the company stack. How do you see that breaking out?
It's a good question. It definitely differs. I would say the larger the organization, they tend to have a preference on using their tech stack. And why that matters is then obviously we need to be nimble enough to connect and make sure that our data gets into their tech stack. If it's a smaller firm or even a bigger firm that just isolates kind of individually as treasury, that's where I would see them using our tools, but a lot of times still supplementing that data within, our system into their homegrown or their tech stack internally.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're going to pause the timer now. Stop it. Thank you so much,
Yeah. Thanks,
Andrew.
Greg.
Really appreciate it. I'm going to reset the timer. That was great. Now I have seen the Q&A box that's gotten populated. I didn't ask those questions, but we'll pull those into the next view. Now, Jolene, yeah, you've got your screen up. This is excellent, and it looks good. We can see it, and I promise everybody I will pay good attention to the chat box. I have it isolated on my screen now, so and we'll come back to those. So thank you so much. And Jolene, you can begin when you're ready.
All right. First of all, as a lot of people said in the chat, hello from New York City here. And thank you, of course, for giving TIS the opportunity to be here today. My name is Jolene, and I'm the Director of Solution Engineering for the Americas at TIS. Before this role, I worked in several departments across the organization, including customer success and product development. So this experience has given me a deep understanding of data management and the challenges that come with it. Today, we'll explore how TIS helps overcome these challenges. From the great presentation of Andrew, we already heard some challenges that Kariba also faced, of course, and solved with APIs, with dedicated connectors, standardized connections, and so on. So we will also touch a bit on that part as well. So let's jump into it. So before diving into the solutions itself, here is a quick look at TIS. So we provide a cloud-based platform for global payments, cash forecasting, and liquidity management. Our goal is to simplify complexity, connecting thousands of banks and systems worldwide, ensuring security, compliance, and transparency. By doing this, we help organizations gain full visibility and control over their financial data, which is, of course, a critical step in data management as well. TIS is trusted by industry experts and the global community. This trust is based on two things. On the left, you see some strong compliance and proven technology. So on the left of the screen, you see some of the awards we've received, like the Treasury Today Adam Smith Award and the Treasury and Risk Alexander Hamilton Awards. These recognize innovation and excellence in corporate payments and cash management. But maybe more important, on the right side, you see certifications. These include like the SWIFT certification, ISO 27 for information security, SOC 1 and SOC 2 Type 2 reports, and SAP certification. Why does this matter for data management? It's because these certifications prove, of course, that TIS can handle sensitive financial data with the highest security and compliance standards. Clean, secure, and compliant data is a foundation for automation and accurate insights, and that's what we deliver. What we often see when we sell our software to treasurers is that the IT departments always ask for them from the beginning on as well. So this is a crucial step in data management, in my opinion. And then one of the biggest challenges that we see in many companies is that cash flows and payment processes inside the office of the CFO are fragmented, right? This means there's very little connectivity and visibility. People work in silos, processes run in silos, and data sits in silos. This makes collaboration hard and creates inefficiencies and risks. For example, large enterprises like Porsche or UPS need to pay thousands of suppliers in different countries. Payments are initiated in local subsidiaries or shared service centers or in the headquarters. And they also maintain hundreds or sometimes thousands of local bank accounts with different banks. Often there's also no standardized payment process across the office of the CFO as well. And different departments using different banks with different e-banking portals and so on. We also see often that manual Excels are still emailed around as kind of a data exchange as well. So yeah, the result, what we see often is that the data is scattered and inconsistent. It makes it hard to manage and analyze. This is a core data management challenge. And because without this clean, connected data, you cannot automate processes or get accurate insights. And that's exactly what TIS is solving. So TIS bridges the gap by optimizing cash flows and payment processes. So we connect ERPs, TMSs, HR systems, and banks into one platform, creating a single source of truth for cash data. This breaks down those silos between people, processes, and systems. And instead of reinventing the wheel, our clients leverage our pre-built connectors and bank formats to be able to very efficiently clean up all that data. So the outcome is, of course, clean, consistent data that drives better collaboration and decision-making. To better understand how TIS tackles data management challenges, maybe let's have a look at our journey. So from the beginning of the foundation of the company, data integration was a core of what was built. The first product our founders created was a bank account management platform. Why start there? Because clean, accurate account data is a foundation of everything else. And this tool gave companies a centralized repository for bank account information, supported by secure workflows, audit trails, and inventory processes. It solved a major challenge, scattered and inconsistent account data across entities and regions. So once that was in place, we added cash visibility on top of it. So now, by connecting with banks and bank accounts worldwide, we provided real-time insights into cash positions across all these entities, countries, and time zones. So this addressed another common challenge, the lack of visibility into global liquidity. Once that was added, we focused on outbound payments. Here, we tackled the complexity of payment formatting. So different banks, countries, and payment types use different standards, which often leads to errors and delays. This TIS streamlined this by offering one of the largest format libraries in the world, enabling straight-through processing from the ERP systems to the banks. So once we have master data in place, cash data, let's say, payments, we introduced advanced analytics on top of this data. This gave companies like flexible drill-down options and deeper insights into their cash flows. So then we turned raw data into actionable intelligence. We also strengthened compliance and security. For example, we launched comprehensive sanction screening with daily updates from global sanction lists. This helped clients manage the risk and stay compliant without a lot of manual effort. And then most recently, we expanded into API-based products. As also mentioned by Kariba, that does not mean that SFTP host-to-host connection will go away, but API is the new trend where we also, of course, jumped into. And these API products are mainly used for real-time payments, but also for reporting purposes, ERP connections, and so on. We also developed community-driven tools based on data, like payee community screening, which uses shared data to improve fraud detection. And then finally, we added cash forecasting and working capital insights. These capabilities leverage all the clean data that we've built over time, and it is combined with advanced algorithms and machine learning. So the result is a platform that not only solves data management challenges, but turns data into a strategic advantage for a lot of our customers. Then maybe just one word about bank account management. So as mentioned, this is the base layer of TIS. It's built on strong data management foundations. So every feature you see here is designed to ensure accuracy, consistency, and control over your data across all banks and entities. So TIS provides autonomy and flexibility for structuring account data and user permissions. Workflows for updates and changes are fully configurable, ensuring governance and compliance at global, regional, and entity levels. All account data and the documentation that can be attached to it are stored centrally, making it easy to monitor it. Also to monitor balances, statements, and do automated reporting on top of it. We also track opening and closing accounts real-time worldwide. And we do implement, in most cases, 4IS principles for updates on master data. So any changes, any deletion, or any addition of master data can follow that specific principle. Finally, we have inventory processes in place. What does it mean? These are like processes that check the consistency and cleanness of the data at a regular time frame. So they can also be executed at any level to make sure that the quality is always up to date, as bank account management is the most important part to build on top, the other features on top of it. Then also similar with what you saw already before, a word about bank connectivity. So what is it all about? It's about making data flow smoothly. On the left, you see different systems, so ERPs and other tools that all create payment and cash data. The problem is that they often are used in different formats and they work in silos, so they don't really communicate with each other. In the middle, you see that TIS is acting as a bridge. It connects all these systems to banks using APIs, Swift, and other methods. It cleans and standardizes data, so everything is consistent and ready for automation. On the right, you have banks and partners. TIS is making sure payments and statements move between your systems and banks without manual work. This means better visibility, less risk, and full compliance. So in short, instead of juggling multiple connections and formats, you get one platform that turns messy data into clear, actionable insights. Then to dive a little bit deeper into the bank side and into the big challenge that we see is that there are many different payment formats over different banks, different countries, and payment types all use different standards, and these also change often. So this makes things complicated and can lead to delays or errors. On the left, you see the main problem, like no global standards, too many formats, frequent changes, the risk of rejected payments or poor cash visibility. And the solution is that we manage one of the largest format libraries in the world. We keep formats updated, create new ones, and support payments and statements in more than 110 countries and over 150 currencies. So this ensures again that the data flow seamlessly without any delays or rejections. And also we of course reduce the workload of IT departments who don't want to spend time on translating formats all the time. The last part I want to touch base on is cash forecasting and working capital insights, because this is, again, all about having the right data, right? So this slide shows how TIS brings everything together. We start by connecting the ERP systems, which we have already done for all the other features I explained as well. And we pull out data such as account receivables, account payables, FX rates, customer, vendor master data, or you name it. So anything which can be relevant for cash forecasting should be, of course, flow through. And then we also still have the bank element that those existing bank connections can be leveraged, of course. But it doesn't stop there. So TIS also standardizes data from FP&L, P&L, procurement, sales, budgets, and so on. So any data that sits in the organization that can bring value to have a great cash forecasting, we try to standardize and connect with. This can be done by also having like kind of flexible connectors. So any data can be uploaded in the format that is easiest to digest for TIs, let's say. So on the next slide, I will show you how we built that forecast based on that data. So typically, TIS starts with a basic layer, and then we build data on top of it to make it digestible and to also make sure that we can add complexity in the correct way, let's say. So a forecasting model is layered and flexible. The first layer starts with the basics, the actuals, bank balances, transactions, manual uploads. And this is easy to set up because it doesn't require those complex integrations, and it gives quick visibility. It's a simple way to start leveraging the TIS platform for forecasting. Next, we move to short-term forecasting by adding ERP data, mainly account receivables and accounts payables, and sometimes purchase sales orders. ERP data is structured and it's cleaned in TIS if it's not yet cleaned in the ERP system itself. So this is already in it. And then the last slide is the long-term forecasting. So we add data on top of this to fulfill your long-term forecasting, and this enables you to add machine learning and AI logics as well into the mix.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jolene. If you want to take that down, that's great too, so we can have a conversation. Thanks for showing the forecasting part at the end. The first question I have has to do with standardizing data coming into the system from internal sources. Do you have to standardize that outside the system, or do you have a way of doing that within your tool?
Yeah, that's a great system. We can do it within our tool. So we have kind of a self-service mapping tool, let's say, where you can really manage all your connections, do the mapping in TIS, and also keep tracking it once the data flows in, let's say.
Okay. The next question has to do with the use of data. So you had shown bank data, internal system data. I also saw on some of the screens third-party data. What are some of the uses of third-party data that your customers currently use?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends a bit on which which companies we have and what their their goal is, of course. But an example of third-party data is for example, the BI tools. Some companies, the bigger the companies, the more they prefer their own tools. So then we make sure that we can export that data to tools like Click, Tableau, Power BI, and so on, to make sure they can do their reporting.
On the payment side, I think you showed something about, you listed payment security. So do you use third-party data for security? I saw rates as well, so counterparties, rates, but what about payment security? Do you use it for that?
Yeah, exactly. So we do have transactions and vendor master data screening. So we can leverage third-party data to like match with against the payments that go out, to make sure if there are like any triggers or any vendors that are infamous, let's say, we will make sure that the end user knows about it. Yeah. So that's indeed another leverage of third-party data.
A question from Jesse in the Q&A box. What are some of the common bottlenecks with connecting internal systems to your platform for bank statement files or bank data?
Yeah. The biggest common bottleneck is, I think, prioritization. So typically, what we see is, IT departments have it super busy with a lot of projects, and treasury projects don't get prioritized often. So that's a bottleneck we notice a lot. How do we cope with that? So TIS takes the bulk of work on ourselves. So the IT workload is limited, but they still need our attention, of course.
If data coming to the system isn't complete, how is the user notified of that, either on a dashboard or if you're making a cash decision for your forecast or your position, how are they notified in context or generally that they're making a decision based on incomplete data?
Yeah, so that's a question that we receive often, and we solved it indeed by, it's two-folded. So we have a dashboard that where you can clearly see if a connection failed or if like bank statements are missing. So then the user can immediately see it. But maybe more interesting is we can also enable email notifications. So then you get proactively an alert if something went wrong with the data, let's say.
So tools matter for managing data, and you showed like a format library. Can you talk about tools that enhance, like format libraries, API libraries, other things that are useful to make life easier for new clients or existing clients?
Yeah, so especially a format library is used often by almost all our clients, just because they don't need to do the payment format translation themselves. Other tools is like NTIS itself. We have dedicated connectors to the most common ERP systems that they can already leverage. So the only thing they need to do is to adjust the mapping, because we saw for SAP, for example, every SAP system is configured a little bit different. So in that way, they can adjust the configuration in TIS itself to make sure their SAP connection makes sense.
I want to ask a couple of questions about bank account management, because you brought that up. You talked about in the context of workflows, because that was something I hadn't asked about before. So you can look like you can have different workflows based upon region or area. What is your strategy with workflows, using data to support consistent workflows and workflows that may be varied or customized or adapted to regions?
Yeah, so workflows itself can be completely configured by our customers, so they can really choose how they want to use it. However, what we saw is the use of workflows is two-sided. The first one is to just make sure that the master data is clean and nobody can just change whatever they want. So changes need to go to a 4S principle. And the second part is, of course, payment approvals. So even if you have, if payments are triggered from the ERP system, they go through TIS to banks, you can still add workflows to make sure that the payment approvals are coming from the right people for the right payments, let's say.
If I, thanks for that. So if I wanted to compare a file that came out of let's say an underlying system in whatever format, and it's something that your system sent to the bank, and you wanted to compare what came from the bank, let's say banking information, account number, with the originating source file. Is that something that your system does inherently or something you can do in process?
Yeah, so of course we try to avoid that because we don't like our users doing manual work, really comparing files. But if needed, indeed, there's an overview of the original files, and there's also complete visibility on what was sent to the banks. So it is possible to compare the two of them in the tool.
Right. The last short question is, for data loss prevention, what tools do you use to ensure extra data doesn't go out of your system in an unauthorized manner?
So our platform is built with the security norms of the standards. So we have a multi-tenant model that splits all the data from each other, so data cannot disappear. The users itself also have full visibility in the data because they have access to dashboards where they can really track where the data sits and what went where it was, let's say.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was excellent. Thanks to both of our presenters. This was excellent. A lot of great content. So thank you, Jolene, and thank you, Andrew. So we have our first poll question, or it's a stacked poll question. Both of them are multiple choice. So go ahead and type in or hit your responses. The top one is, which of the following are organization's biggest obstacles in establishing a data management strategy? There's 6 options, including other or unsure. And there's 6 options for which areas of data management do you view as most urgent to address in the next 12 months. So go ahead and select both of those and hit enter. And I will give a quick summary of what we heard, what we learned. So what did we hear and what did we learn? A couple of things that we learned and what was covered. We looked at ensuring clean, accurate, and consistent data matters for analysis decisions, and normalizing and integrating data from diverse system is crucial for the work of finance, the work of treasury. Managing data volume and speed is inherent in terms of connecting to more speed. The idea of we're moving more towards real time, more towards streaming, though there is a whole world of daily information, hourly information, and more currently. We talked about advancing analytics and AI readiness as crucial. That's a key component and use of data. Strengthening data governance and security. We looked at several ways of protecting that. Gaining access to more data also means that we have to be a little bit more careful about how we manage it. We looked at self-service with things like the API Center. We looked at AI and data management, helping to manage data as well as do analysis. We saw reformatting tools and developer tool sets. We looked at third-party data, how that gets incorporated into the system, not only internal data from ERPs and other platforms shared into the system or outside the system, banks, but also third-party data for things like risk and other functions. We looked at broader sets of data for accounts payable, accounts receivable, the entire cash conversion cycle. A key focus of forecasting for all treasury areas is there, and data plays a crucial role there as well. We looked at supporting various payment structures and formats and changes. That's a rapidly developing area, and we saw and heard how that was handled. So really big hand to Kyriba and to TIS for stepping through that. We have the results on the screen from the survey. Disparate data sources and limited integration between ERP and TMS. Bank systems was number 1 by a little bit. Disparate data sources and consistent format number 2, both averaging to 40%. And then we see insufficient internal expertise or resources. That's a really good question. So a good setup for these two companies for that. And then on the areas of data management you view as most urgent, you can see improving data quality and consistency. And then number 2, enhancing system integration, interoperability, this idea of we need to get all of our data. And then certainly maybe it's emergent, but number 3 is expanding analytical and AI capabilities, which is geared for efficiency and other activities. So we'll share that information with the group. I want to thank both of you for joining and for everybody for spending time on our session. Lastly, so in addition to thanking these two companies, I would invite you to subscribe to Treasury Update Podcast. We have a lot of information on data, AI readiness. Both these companies have been guests on there. Invite you to subscribe wherever you get your podcast information from. So again, thank you so much to Kariba and to TIS and to you for joining this head-to-head session. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.